In this video, I'm going to show you why it's important to understand the difference between transition and change and how you can use this to bounce back from redundancy. Welcome to the channel. My name is Jane Ferre, career coach for professionals who are ready to take the next step in their career. If you've just arrived here, then don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. So I'd like to speak about how you can transition yourself through redundancy using the transition model. This was created by change consultant William Bridges and was first published in his 1991 book, Managing Transitions. So the main strength of this model is that it focuses on transition and not change. And the difference between transition and change is subtle yet very important. When we talk about change, change is something that happens to people. So even when they disagree about what is happening to them. So transition, on the other hand, is internal. It's what happens in people's minds as they go through the change. So change can happen quite quickly, and transition usually occurs much more slowly. So let me illustrate this using the example of my second redundancy. So I was informed on the Friday that my role no longer existed and I was to go home, write a handover and come back in the following Monday to return all my equipment. The change here happened very quickly over a course of a few days. So that was the time from learning that my role no longer existed to handing in all of my possessions. That was a few days, a weekend. My transition to deciding what I was going to do next took me months. So the model that I've got on the screen here highlights the 3 stages of transition that people go through when they experience change. So they are, the first stage is stage 1, which we call ending, losing, and letting go. Stage 2 is the neutral zone, and stage 3 is the new beginning. So what Bridges says is that some people will go through each stage at their own pace. So for example, those people who are more comfortable with the change are likely to move ahead to stage 3 quite quickly, while others might linger at stages 1 or 2, or maybe even go back and forth between them. So let's have a look at each stage in greater detail. So first one, stage 1, ending, losing, letting go. So people enter this stage when they are first presented with the change. So you will have entered here when you found out that you're at risk of redundancy, or when you discovered that your role has indeed become redundant. So this stage is often marked with resistance and emotional upheaval because we're being forced to let go of something that we are quite comfortable with. So at this stage, the things that you may experience emotions like fear, denial, anger, sadness, disorientation, frustration, uncertainty, and a sense of loss. What we need to do is we need to accept that something is ending before we can begin to accept the new idea. So if we don't acknowledge the emotions that you're going through at this stage, you will likely encounter resistance throughout the entire process. So it's important that you accept there might be some resistance to the change and just allow yourself time to accept the change and let it go. If you can, find someone to talk to about how you're feeling. This could be your line manager, a colleague, a partner, friend, a mentor, or even a coach. Very often we fear what we don't understand. So the more you can envisage a positive future and understand how your knowledge and skills are an essential part of moving to that future, the more likely you are to move on to the next stage. So here are some ideas to help you to transition from stage 1 to the next stage of the model. So the first one is to notice intangible losses. So our job brings much more to our lives than just a job title and a salary. It brings status, and it also feeds our ego and our self-esteem. So when our roles are made redundant, we're not just losing our job, we're losing everything else that goes with it. when I'd been to networking events in the past, I'd always been Jane from British Airways, and then suddenly I went to being Jane who's actively seeking her next opportunity. Losing the cachet of your job title and the gravitas that comes with that can be equally as challenging as losing the job itself. So try and mark the ending in some way if you can. If it's right for you, then organise some sort of event. Now, this doesn't have to be some full-blown party. It could just be meeting up with a few colleagues in a bar after work. Some people prefer to say goodbye on an individual basis and then exit the business discreetly. But as difficult as it might seem at the time, do try and mark the ending if you possibly can. This will help you to respect the past and a positive legacy that paves the way for a new one. So our past creates the person we are today, both good and bad. You may be losing your job, but you are taking all of your skills, knowledge and expertise out of the door with you, and you're using all of that to create the next step in your life. Resist the temptation to stamp out the past like you would do with an infection. The past is what makes us, and we should celebrate that. If you can, take something with you. Now, I'm not suggesting here that you should steal something, but take something with you as a small memento of your time in the role. It could be an award that you won or a photo from a team event that you attended. Okay, so let's move on to stage 2. This is the neutral zone. In this stage, people affected by the change are often confused, uncertain, and a bit impatient. So think of this stage as the bridge between the old and the new. In some ways, you might still be attached to the old stage whilst trying to adapt to the new. You might experience some of the things like resentment towards the change or the thing that's happened to you. You might want to protect the status quo or the way things are right now. You might also have some self-doubt, which can lead to low productivity. You might be anxious about your status, your identity, and your future. You might also be skeptical about the change, or again, the thing that's happened to you. You might experience confusion because people are often distracted by the change whilst they're trying to focus on their future. What you might see is some of your old weaknesses re-emerging. So if you've always reacted a certain way to situations, then what you might see is that you might revert back to this behaviour. So just be mindful of that. So despite all of that, this stage can be one of great creativity, innovation, and renewal. It's a great time to experiment with new ways of thinking or new ways of working. And it can also be uncomfortable because it can feel as though it's unproductive and you're making little progress. You can also feel a little bit lost here, and you might need a solid sense of direction to get back on track. So here are some ideas to help you transition out of the neutral zone and into new beginnings. So firstly, remind yourself of your short-term goals. This will help keep you motivated, help you see a positive side to the change. Celebrate your small wins. Remember, every little win will certainly help improve your self-esteem, and every little win will take you one step closer to where you want to get to. If you're working during a redundancy consultation, you may need help managing your workload, not because of you, but because you will be distracted. So speak to your manager and see if there's any work that you can deprioritize or stop completely, or ask if they could bring in additional resources to help cover the work. You could request additional training, so particularly in any areas where you feel that your skills are lacking, yet in demand in the job market. So this could be improving your level of knowledge with things like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, or even some elements of how to use social media. You could also request outplacement support. So this is specialist help that can support you in finding alternative employment or setting up your own businesses. So some organisations actually offer this as part of a redundancy settlement. If yours doesn't, ask for it. So let's move on to the next stage, the new beginning. The last transition stage is a time of acceptance and energy. You'll begin to embrace the change and you'll build skills that will help you to work successfully in a new way. What you'll find is that you start to see early wins from some of your efforts, and you're most likely to experience high energy, an openness to learning, and renewed commitment to your situation. As you begin to adapt to your new situation, it's essential that you maintain the momentum. Otherwise, you might find yourself slipping back into previous stages. So here's some ideas to help prevent you from falling back to the previous stage in the model. When you reach this point, you'll have a much clearer idea about your long-term vision. So continue to link your smaller goals to your longer-term vision, and you'll continue to make steps towards it. Remember to celebrate all of the successes you have, no matter how small you think they are. Keep a list. This will remind you of how far you've come since the beginning of your transition, and start to establish your new identity and be consistent in all of the above. So in summary, change is something that happens to people even if they don't agree with it, whereas transition is internal. It's what's happening in our minds as we go through the change. So change can happen very quickly, whereas transition occurs much more slowly. The transition model will help you guide yourself through the change so that you're much better able to accept it and to move on. So overlaying this model into the more traditional change curve is another useful indication so that you can actually see how you're moving out of the ending stage into the neutral stage and into the new beginning stage, and some of the emotions that you will feel at each point. There is a link in the show notes of this video where you can download a worksheet with all of this information attached. The worksheet also contains an image of the model and an infographic that talks through some of those emotions that you might be feeling at each stage. So think about where you are right now on your journey and mark this on the model with today's date, and then continue to monitor it on a weekly basis and start to take notes of some actions that you can complete to support you through the stages. I've already given you some examples earlier on in the video, so do feel free to replay this to prompt you to think of some ideas that would work for you. So take a look at the model, plot where you are right now, and continue to do this on a regular basis. Weekly, I think, works best. You can also use the worksheet to think about some of the actions on an individual basis that could help you transition through to the next stage. So best of luck. If you found this useful, then please do click on that like button, share this video with anyone who you feel would get some value from it, and subscribe for future episodes. My name is Jane Foray, Executive Career Coach. I'll see you on the next video.